Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We're very happy today to have Jane Halston with us, who is the co-executive director of Bread of Life. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Thanks, it's nice to be here.
Where were you born and where were you raised?
I was born in San Francisco, California, and I was partly raised there through 7th grade. Then my dad moved up to Sacramento. He worked for the state. So the whole family moved up there, and I went to high school and 8th grade in Sacramento.
And graduated from?
Graduated from Mariloma High School. Then went back down to the Bay Area and went to Cal for undergrad.
You said the whole family, so you have brothers and sisters?
I have 5 sisters.
And they are where?
My oldest sister's gone. She died 20 years ago or so. And the rest of my sisters are all in Northern California. We pretty much like it here.
Are either of your parents still living?
Both of my parents are still living.
Where?
One lives in San Francisco, and my mom lives up in Sonoma.
And so what did you do after college?
I took a year or 2 off to save some money, and then I went to law school. And I came up to Davis and went to the Martin Luther King Jr. School of Law at UC Davis.
And have you practiced law?
I did.
How'd that go?
I loved it. I practiced law for, I think, full-time 5 or 6 years, and then part-time for a few years after that.
Here in the Sacramento area?
I did. Yeah, I actually stayed in Davis. Worked for a firm that had an office in Davis and an office in Modesto.
Did you have a happy childhood and grow up in a fun time?
I did. I grew up in San Francisco in the 60s, which was quite an interesting time. We lived in the edge of the Mission District in San Francisco, and so it was one of the main areas for the Chicano, the Brown Power movement. And the elementary school I went to was Roman Catholic, and I think there was probably, I want to say, between 60 and 70% Hispanic in the school that I went to. And then the rest of the folks were from everywhere. And so that's kind of the way I remember my childhood, is a real mix of diverse people, both at the school, in the neighborhood. And then at the same time, San Francisco had at least 3 generations of my family in it. So it was regularly being around great-grandparents, great-aunts and uncles, grandparents. So it was both this really solid connection, core connection, and then this incredible diversity.
I didn't see any diversity in my life at all till I went to boot camp, Vietnam, and then it was all diversity.
Oh my goodness, I bet.
And it was a culture shock, but it was something I really liked. It was a natural fit for me. I liked that people spoke different ways, said different things, looked a little different than I did, acted a little different, had backgrounds that were dramatically different than the one I was coming from. And I liked it. It really, really appealed to me. Have you remained in the Catholic Church?
Yes and no. I would still consider myself Catholic. It's in my cells, to my very being. It was a profound formation that I received. I went to a school that was run by Dominican sisters, and they are supreme educators. So that was fabulous. I'm not very enamored of the institutional church right now. The God that I met was very loving and very compassionate and very inclusive. And I find that institutional church can be more rigid, and that is a challenge for me. That very diversity that I celebrated and loved and saw in San Francisco seems to be a bit of a challenge for the Catholic Church right now, and that's a challenge for me as well.
I sat with some faith leaders the other night, and we talked about the issue of, are you an active Catholic or Lutheran or Seventh-day Adventist or Mormon, or are you not? And every one of those men and women agreed that the chasm between being really active and not being active has grown wider and wider and wider. That people either say, yes, I am, or no, not really.
Yeah.
And the old days of saying, well, I go to church on Easter and I go to church on Christmas and I do this, and You know, it's just a lot wider and a lot deeper than it used to be, and they all were in agreement to that, and that surprised me a little bit, I think, mostly because I hadn't thought about it, I guess, but you know, people either say, I want to be in church. The Catholics I know are making a hard push to get, you know, those who haven't been quite as active to come back. But anyway, it interested me that they said, no, you know, they either are or they're not. One of the men talked about how people who are coming to church this Sunday or this Saturday, don't forget this might be their very first time that they've come in a long, long time.
Yeah.
So treat it as if this is going to be the first great experience, and not you're just going to get up and say, well, here we are again. Well, good. Now, how did you come to Bread of Life?
I would say by accident, really. I had a very good friend of mine started the Bread of Life Center, and I was in a place of discernment when she started it. The single most important thing in my life is my relationship with God. And I was following that and had been following that for a while. It took me away from law. It took me into working with alcohol and drug addiction recovery, and I ran actually Cache Creek Lodge for a while. And that was simply because I heard a still small voice within saying, this is what you need to do. I was on their board of directors. And I moved from there into what I call now Ministry of Availability and Presence, which really means that for the next 8 years, I moved from family to family, just helping folks out that were going through some sort of transition. It might be a family where there was somebody who was ill and they needed an extra set of hands around, or it was they had births or multiple births and they needed an extra set of hands around, or there might be some sort of challenge. One family had accepted 4 foster kids into the family, and because they wanted to keep that group of siblings together. And so I ended up living with that family for a while. So I did that for about 8 years. And then my friend started this Bread of Life Center. And I thought, you know, I really believe in what you're doing, but I don't think God's calling me to do that right now. And I kept doing the availability and presence, and then she needed some help doing some administrative and a little fundraising, and I'd had some experience in that. So I said, I'll volunteer a little bit for you. That was the slippery slope, and then I ended up I think I did a little bit of volunteer work for her while I was still doing the other for a couple of years, and it's probably been almost full-time since 2001. So. Did
you feel fulfillment and success in the availability and presence work that you did?
Oh, absolutely. It was powerful. I did things I never thought I would do. I did things that I thought I was becoming a lawyer so I could pay somebody else to do them, you know, which is taking care of people. It meant cleaning. It meant administering medications. It meant giving people baths at times if they were ill. It meant changing diapers and running around after little kids and rubbing people's back as they went to bed at night. It was very hands-on, kind of nurse, sometimes hospice worker, things I never thought I would do. Same thing with the Bread of Life Center. There was this sense of how do we be open to God and to that more Holy Spirit energy in the Christian tradition that takes you where it will and gives you the tools and the skills, but you don't know you have them. You don't know that's where you're going, and I find that God meets me more powerfully when I have no idea what's happening or what's going on. I just know I'm supposed to follow.
Do you like the fact that the Holy Spirit usually whispers or talks softly as opposed to being yelled at?
Sort of yes and no, and I say that because sometimes I miss it. And I'm also the kind that's like, you must be talking to somebody else. I must have picked up a wrong number, is kind of the way I look at it. So I think that soft whispering, that still small voice, can be a challenge for me to hear and to follow. But I have to say that the Holy Spirit energy also can be this huge gush of powerful wind, fire, and it comes to me that way as well.
When I hear those small, quiet promptings, most of the time you really begin to focus, and sometimes you say, "Can you repeat that?"
Yeah.
Can you say it again? Now, explain more about the Bread of Life specifically. What's happening there?
One of the main things that the Bread of Life got started to do was to offer a thing called spiritual direction to more and more people. And essentially what spiritual direction is, it's where people sit like we are, one-on-one, and somebody is sharing the sacred story of their life with a person who is trained, and I mean highly trained, to listen deeply, to ask questions that help illumine that sacred journey, and to ask questions that help the person align or be more open to their version of God or spiritual journey or the connection. And that's why that listening piece is so important. So spiritual direction is one of the main things that we do, and we offer that to people across faith traditions. So we have people that are Buddhist, that are Jewish, that are Christian, a variety of different Christians, denominations, and then folks that would say, I don't really have a faith tradition. I just know that God's calling me powerfully. We train people to be spiritual directors. We have a 3-year training program. Sandra Lamason, who is the founder and the other executive director of the Bread of Life Center, has been a spiritual direction director for a couple of decades. And she served on the board of directors for Spiritual Directors International. And in that process, got to know people from a variety of different traditions and people who had been training directors for a long time. So we have a team that comes together and trains folks in this 3-year program. So that's one piece. We also do retreats and workshops for a variety of different churches or faith-based groups. Then we had an open art studio. We decided that as people came for spiritual direction, and some of our spiritual directors found that they met God more powerfully when they were doing creative processes. And so we began to explore what would it mean if we had an art center that was really open, with the idea of inviting folks to really tap into that something bigger than themselves through creative expression. And then we were offered space in North Sacramento, so we said, you know, maybe this is also a way to help people that are in this really poor, challenged area to connect with each other. So we opened this art studio space in North Sacramento United Methodist Church. That church was getting smaller. We needed a place. They wanted more people to be using their building, and it was a fabulous partnership. It still is. So we started off there with the art center, and it's open and free to anyone. So when we're there are art materials and supplies of, gosh, almost every kind you can think of or want. And anybody can come and use them. And what happens is as they sit there and create, they begin to talk to each other. And they begin to connect and share their hurts, their sorrows, their celebrations, their lives, and begin to form community and connect with each other. So there's the art portion of it. And we do a thing called contemplative dialogue or mindful leadership. And that's where we're beginning to help people to learn how to speak with each other differently, to listen to each other in groups. So many of us in our faith traditions, we have these church boards, sessions, administrative councils, we call them a variety of things. And for some reason, as we're doing the business of our faith communities, we often forget the values. We lose sight of the mission and can fight over money or fears that we have about who is or isn't in our building. And so this is a way of both teaching and experiencing different ways of connecting with each other so we know what we're meaning and we're really acting out, living out our values. So we train people in ways to do that. Sometimes these are open trainings, and sometimes we go in and specifically work with a faith community that's saying, we're at this kind of evolution, or we're struggling with this issue, can you come in and help us? That work is actually all over the United States and into Canada. Some of our folks are even working in Jamaica and Australia. So it's exciting ministry.
I've walked through the art studio, and that's real cool. I wish I could draw a straight line. But how often are people there painting or drawing or making?
Until recently, we were open Monday through Thursday. And during those hours, there were people there every hour that we were open.
And are they creative? Do you see some really good things?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's amazing. It's amazing. And if you come in, you will see the artwork that's been done there all over the place. I mean, folks can either take it home with them or they can leave it. And we have both. So you can see some of the artwork that's been done there, but people do some of the most amazing things.
And the address there is?
650 El Camino Avenue. It's right near El Camino and Del Paso Boulevard.
Thank you. Because I think viewers would want to see that. That's a great place to sit down and let the juices flow.
Exactly.
Going back for a second, would you say is the mission of Bread of Life to just bring people to God, closer to God? What's sort of the long pole in the tent?
We believe that everybody has sacred worth and value. Everybody.
Well said.
And we believe that there is some special manifestation of the divine in each of us, in each one of us. If you're tapping in to your divine, to your God place, whatever language you use, your life is going to be better. But so's mine. And so our whole thing is about helping you to tap into whatever manifestation of the divine is at your core and to support you on that journey. And so some of the folks that we're dealing with do not believe at all that they have sacred worth and value. So we're approaching them from that place of you are beloved. Some folks know that, are just struggling maybe at a point in their life where they don't know how to live that out, or they're living that out powerfully, but they want to talk to somebody. They want some companionship on that journey. So we have faith leaders, we have clergy folks that come to spiritual direction, that come to the workshops and retreats, that call us in to do contemplative dialogue, and we have folks that are brand new or never been on a spiritual journey that come in usually through the Arts Center. And it's the whole mix.
Would you say that from your experience, the people that you're working with, do most people believe in a life after death?
I think that's a great question. I'm not sure. I can't answer that definitively. I know some do, and some are so on survival mode that they don't even think about that.
Focusing in the here and the now.
Exactly.
Can we get through today? And do you see great extremes in emotions where one just needs to get through the next 10 minutes and the other one is hoping that sometime the next year or two life will change?
Yes, absolutely. Right now especially, there is such anxiety. I haven't seen anything like it before. Some of the folks that come to the Art Center are disabled. You know, they might have been in a car accident, or they might have some sort of chronic health issue or mental health issue, and they're watching their safety net explode on them. And so they don't know. They don't know what's going to happen, and it scares them. And I liken them actually to the canaries in the mine shaft that the miners used to have, and when the canaries kind of keeled over, they realized that the gases were building up and they were in danger. It seems to me that this group is the much more sensitive group that are saying, boy, we're about ready to keel over. Are the rest of you paying attention? And then we've got some folks that have been long-term church members who are saying, our churches are emptying out right now, a lot of them. And what's going to happen? And right now, we have so many challenges economically, environmentally, spiritually. Where's the leadership? And where are the folks that really want to have that kind of leadership available? And how can we make this different? So we're seeing tremendous, and then some folks can contain that. Some folks have family structures, faith communities that help support them through that. And a lot of the folks, especially at the Art Center, have nothing except maybe coming to that Art Center and the folks that they're connecting with there.
And when they paint or draw or mold or figure or lay out, cut and paste, what are they putting together things that are easily understandable?
I'm not sure what you mean by easily understandable.
Well, are they painting peace and what they're hoping for? Or are they painting confusion and life is hectic? And when we see a child draw something that a teacher wants, he may draw something chaotic, or he might draw something serene and lovely. What do you see in artwork?
A whole mix. What's interesting and what we're focused in on is what happens to the people while they're doing the art. You can watch some folks come into their own skin. They came restless, irritated, agitated, uncomfortable in their own skin. They start to sit down and they paint or they're writing poetry and they get calm and they find peace. And even if it's only for 10 minutes or a couple of hours, it's a place where they don't find it anywhere else.
Will they come back?
Very often. And some folks come for a while and they get whatever they need to kind of go to the next place. It might be finding a job. It might be moving to a different place. It might be healing. It just varies. Some folks come after they have experienced the loss of a loved one, and they kind of work through that healing process and then they move on. And some folks have stayed with us the whole 6 years that we've been in North Sacramento.
Do you see more of the young than the old, or are there more men than women, or is it just a nice brush across society?
Well, it's a big brush. The mix that we're seeing is we haven't seen kids as much because we're open primarily during the school day.
Right.
And because a lot of the kids in North Sacramento are taking care of their parents. A lot of the really challenged kids. So we don't see them as much. What we do see are the whole age mix of adults. We're seeing more men because more men are losing their jobs and they're available during the day. But that's one of the reasons why we've moved from Monday through Thursday to Monday through Wednesday for the Open Art Studio. What we want to do is, and we realize we're missing some of the folks in the 50s to 70s range who've retired early or lost their jobs. These are the folks whose kids are coming home because they lost their houses. They're also the people who are taking care of older folks, their parents or people in their neighborhood. And what we're realizing is we want to make sure that we're offering some more long-term creative-based retreat-type opportunities for them to really work through stuff and to develop community and connection with each other.
How would the folks that are watching us talk here help you financially?
Well, there's two ways. We'd love financial help, and all they'd have to do is write a check to the Bread of Life Center, or they can go right online. We have a website, www.breadoflife.org, and or they can come by, or they can volunteer. I mean, if there's folks out there that are saying, I want to be connected with something, and they want to meet a variety of people, we're always looking for folks that can host in the Art Center. But we're also looking for people that can help keep the building up, that are interested in doing some administrative or clerical help. It's a variety of things. Fundraising help would be wonderful. So we would love to increase our family by inviting people to volunteer with us, but we certainly wouldn't turn away cash or checks.
Will you still be doing this in 10 more years?
I have moved more into the contemplative dialogue. I'm really spending more of my time doing that. And for me, it feels like a vocation. It feels like a real strong call. And I believe that in order to do that with integrity, I need to be part of a community. And Bread of Life, especially with that Holy Spirit energy, is that community for me. So at this point in my life, I can't imagine being anywhere else.
In sort of a nutshell, what what happens in the dialogue part? Is it just people are allowed to talk their way through till you can help them find themselves?
Well, first we're teaching skills. So how can I tell you that I'm struggling with you in a way that has compassion at the core of it? So that's one of the things. And how can we name the challenges that we're seeing around us? That we're thinking that the world is calling us to do more with less. So how do we talk about that? How do we talk about the challenges of that? How do we be open and aware that the way you see things might be different than the way I see things? And instead of getting into who's right and who's wrong, how do we get into maybe that's the way God designed it? That we're all supposed to have it from our different vantage points, and we come together as community for the very reason of exploring those different pieces of the truth or pieces of reality. And so this is ways to teach and model that, to learn how to be undefended, to learn how to be nonviolent with each other, whether that is of the tongue. Am I valuing you? Am I speaking with respect? Am I really curious about where you're coming from and what you have to offer? So it's learning how to do that and receive it as communities, really with the idea that we're supposed to be different and that that's a celebration place.
Do you think are there as many people trying to overcome the spiritual as they are overcoming the physical, getting something to eat, have a place to sleep, get a bath? Is the spiritual struggle as great as the physical struggle?
Oh, see, I don't know how you can separate them.
Good answer.
I think we're all struggling with that mix. It's like the infinity loop. It's both and.
Good answer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're very, very appreciative. We want to hear more about these sorts of things that don't necessarily fit one of the churches and one of the blocks somewhere, because there are many spiritual and religious and fine people.
Oh, wonderful people.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.
My
Take
pleasure.
care.